Welcome to Echoes of Ancient America. Tonight, we journey into a side of American history that most people never hear about. Long before modern cities, highways, and nations covered the landscape, mysterious civilizations rose and fell across the continent, leaving behind clues that still puzzle historians, archaeologists, and explorers today. Hidden beneath deserts, forests, mountains, and river valleys are the remnants of forgotten worlds. Massive cities once stood where empty fields now stretch to the horizon. Giant earthworks were constructed with astonishing precision. Ancient trade networks connected distant peoples across thousands of miles. Entire communities appeared, flourished, and then seemingly vanished, leaving behind only fragments of their stories. Tonight, we'll explore America's greatest unsolved mysteries. We'll investigate the disappearance of the Roanoke colony, the rise and fall of the ancient city of Cahokia, and the remarkable footprints discovered at White Sands that challenged long-held assumptions about the first people to arrive in North America. We'll visit the towering ruins of Chaco Canyon, examine mysterious desert figures carved into the earth, uncover the forgotten city of Etzanoa, and follow ancient copper trade routes that once connected distant civilizations across the continent. Along the way, we'll also explore strange mysteries that continue into the modern era, from the unexplained Taos hum to the glowing lights of Brown Mountain and the centuries-old treasure legends of Oak Island. And before we begin, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Every story, every memory, and every place matters. And together we keep history alive. Now let's begin. Chapter 1, Segment 1, Cahokia and the Mystery of the Mound Builders. As we begin our journey into America's greatest lost mysteries, we travel back nearly 1,000 years to a place that would seem almost impossible to many modern observers. Imagine standing on a broad floodplain near the meeting of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers sometime around the year 1100 CE. The morning mist rises slowly above fertile fields stretching toward the horizon. Canoes glide across nearby waterways carrying travelers and goods from distant lands. Smoke rises from countless homes scattered across a vast urban landscape. In every direction, people move through plazas, pathways, markets, and neighborhoods. Towering above them all stands an enormous earthen monument, larger than any prehistoric structure north of Mexico. This is Cahokia, one of the greatest cities ever built in ancient North America and one of the continent's most enduring mysteries. Today, millions of people live within a few hours of the site, without fully realizing that a city once stood there whose population rivaled or exceeded many famous medieval European cities. At its peak, Cahokia may have been home to tens of thousands of people. It was a place of remarkable organization, monumental architecture, extensive trade networks, and sophisticated social structures. Yet despite its success, the city eventually declined and was largely abandoned long before Europeans reached the region. The mystery is not simply how Cahokia rose, but why it faded away. To understand Cahokia, we must first appreciate the landscape that made its existence possible. The Mississippi floodplain provided some of the most fertile agricultural land on the continent. Seasonal flooding enriched the soil, creating ideal conditions for maize cultivation. Corn agriculture had spread through much of eastern North America over preceding centuries, and in the Mississippi Valley it supported growing populations, capable of constructing large settlements. Food surpluses allowed communities to expand beyond basic subsistence. Some people became artisans. Others specialized in trade, leadership, ceremony, or construction. Over generations, These developments created the foundations upon which Cahokia would rise. The city itself was unlike anything most people imagine when they think of ancient North America. Rather than stone pyramids or towering masonry walls, Cahokia was defined by earth. Hundreds of mounds dotted the landscape, each carefully constructed through the labor of countless individuals carrying baskets filled with soil. The largest known today as Monk's Mound covered approximately 14 acres and rose over 100 feet above the surrounding terrain. Even now, after centuries of erosion, it remains the largest prehistoric earthen structure in North America. Standing atop its summit would have offered an extraordinary view of the city below. Broad plazas stretched outward between neighborhoods and ceremonial spaces. Roads connected different districts. The landscape itself had been reshaped through human effort on a scale that remains astonishing today. Archaeologists continue debating exactly how Cahokia was governed, but there is little doubt that significant organization was required to coordinate construction projects of this magnitude. Leaders must have mobilized labor, distributed resources, and maintained social cohesion among large populations. Religious and ceremonial traditions likely played important roles in legitimizing authority and bringing communities together. Certain mounds supported important structures on their summits, perhaps serving as residences for leaders, ceremonial platforms, or administrative centers. The city appears to have functioned as both a political and spiritual center whose influence extended far beyond its immediate surroundings. One of the most fascinating aspects of Cahokia involves its connections to distant regions. Trade networks linked the city to communities across much of North America. Marine shells from the Gulf Coast arrived through river systems stretching hundreds of miles. Copper traveled from northern regions near the Great Lakes. Exotic stones and minerals appeared within ceremonial contexts. These materials were transformed into ornaments, ritual objects, and symbols of status. Every imported artifact tells a story of movement, exchange, and human connection. Cahokia did not exist in isolation. It occupied a central position within a continent-spanning network of relationships that facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and traditions. Daily life within the city must have been vibrant and dynamic. Farmers worked fields, producing the crops that sustained urban populations. Craftspeople shaped pottery, carved shell ornaments, and created ceremonial objects. Traders arrived from distant communities carrying goods and news. Religious gatherings brought people together for ceremonies reinforcing social bonds and cultural values. Children grew up surrounded by monumental architecture and bustling activity. The city itself became a world of opportunities and responsibilities, a place where individuals from different backgrounds interacted within one of the largest settlements the continent had ever seen. Yet despite its achievements, Cahokia remains mysterious. Around the 13th and 14th centuries, signs of change begin appearing within the archaeological record. Population levels seem to decline. Certain neighborhoods were abandoned. Construction activity slowed. Eventually, much of the city ceased functioning as the vibrant center it had once been. Why? Researchers have proposed numerous explanations. Environmental pressures may have contributed. Deforestation associated with construction and fuel consumption could have altered local ecosystems. Flooding may have disrupted agriculture. Resource demands created by large populations may have strained available supplies. Social tensions, political changes, disease, migration, and religious transformations have all been considered. The challenge is that no single explanation fully accounts for the evidence. Cahokia's decline appears to have resulted from a combination of factors interacting over time. Perhaps this complexity is what makes the mystery so compelling. Human societies rarely rise or fall for one reason alone. They are shaped by countless interconnected forces. As we sit quietly beside the great mounds beneath a sky slowly brightening with dawn, it becomes clear that Cahokia's story is not merely one of disappearance. It is a story of creativity, cooperation, ambition, and adaptation. The people who built this city transformed landscapes, established far-reaching connections, and created one of the most remarkable urban centers in ancient North America. Even though the city eventually changed and its population dispersed, its legacy remains embedded within the earthworks still visible today. The mounds stand as silent reminders that a sophisticated civilization once flourished here, challenging modern assumptions about the continent's past. Cahokia asks us to reconsider what we think we know about ancient America. It reminds us that great cities can emerge in unexpected places, that monumental achievements often lie hidden beneath familiar landscapes, and that some of history's greatest mysteries are not found in distant lands but within the heart of North America itself. As the sunlight spreads across the Mississippi Valley and illuminates the immense earthworks left behind by the people of Cahokia, another mystery begins to emerge from the landscape. The city itself was extraordinary, but it did not appear from nowhere. Long before Cahokia reached its height, generations of indigenous communities across eastern North America had been constructing monumental earthworks, raising mounds, shaping ceremonial centers, and transforming landscapes through collective effort. These builders left behind some of the most impressive archaeological sites on the continent, yet for centuries their identities and purposes remained misunderstood. Today, archaeologists recognize these societies as part of a long tradition of mound-building cultures that flourished across the eastern woodlands for thousands of years. Yet many mysteries remain. Why were the mounds built? What ceremonies took place upon them? How did communities organize the labor required for such enormous projects? And what can these monuments tell us about civilizations that left no written records behind? To answer these questions, we must travel back long before the rise of Cahokia, across river valleys, forests, and rolling hills stretching from the Ohio Valley to the Mississippi Basin. Communities began constructing earthen monuments on a scale that still inspires wonder today. Some mounds served as burial sites, others functioned as ceremonial platforms. Still others formed part of complex geometric earthworks whose shapes can only be fully appreciated from above. The builders carried soil basket by basket, shaping landscapes according to plans that required vision, organization, and shared purpose. These were not random piles of earth. They were carefully designed structures reflecting cultural beliefs, social relationships, and connections between communities and the natural world. One of the earliest major mound-building traditions emerged among the people archaeologists now call the Adena, flourishing more than 2,000 years ago. Adena communities constructed burial mounds that became focal points within the landscape. Individuals interred within these monuments were often accompanied by elaborate artifacts, suggesting complex ceremonial traditions surrounding death and remembrance. The mounds themselves connected generations, preserving memory within physical structures capable of enduring for centuries. Later, the Hopewell tradition expanded mound building into something even more ambitious. Vast geometric earthworks appeared across portions of present-day Ohio and surrounding regions. Circles, squares, octagons, and other precisely shaped enclosures covered large areas of land. Some alignments appear linked to astronomical events, suggesting sophisticated observations of celestial cycles. These earthworks demonstrate remarkable planning and cooperation. They also raise questions that continue challenging researchers today. Why invest such enormous effort into constructing structures visible primarily from elevated perspectives? What meanings did these geometric forms hold for their builders? The mystery deepens because the mound builders left no written explanations behind. Archaeologists must reconstruct their world through artifacts, settlement patterns, and the monuments themselves. Yet, the absence of written records has often led to misunderstanding. During the 19th century, some observers refused to believe that indigenous peoples had built such impressive earthworks. Speculative theories proposed lost races, vanished civilizations, or visitors from distant lands. These ideas reflected prejudice rather than evidence. Modern archaeology has demonstrated conclusively that the mounds were constructed by the ancestors of indigenous peoples whose descendants continue living in North America today. The true mystery is not who built the mounds, but how these societies organized themselves and what meanings they attached to their creations. Labor alone represents an astonishing puzzle. Consider the effort required to construct a large mound without metal tools, draft animals, or wheeled vehicles. Thousands upon thousands of baskets filled with earth had to be gathered, transported, and deposited. Such projects demanded cooperation extending beyond individual families. Communities worked together toward shared goals, suggesting social systems capable of coordinating large numbers of people. Yet, unlike many ancient civilizations elsewhere in the world, these societies often lacked that complexity can emerge through cooperation as well as hierarchy. The mounds themselves likely served multiple purposes. Some functioned as burial monuments honoring important individuals or groups. Others provided elevated platforms supporting structures used for ceremonies, leadership, or community gatherings. Certain earthworks appear aligned with solstices, lunar cycles, or other astronomical events, indicating connections between monument construction and observations of the sky. The landscape became a canvas upon which communities expressed relationships between Earth, ancestors, and cosmos. Every mound embodied layers of meaning extending far beyond its physical form. Another mystery involves continuity. Mound building persisted across centuries and involved multiple cultural traditions. The Adena, Hopewell, Mississippian, and other societies all participated in earthwork construction, yet each developed distinctive approaches. Ideas evolved, purposes changed, new forms emerged while older traditions continued influencing subsequent generations. This continuity reveals a deep cultural history linking communities across time and space. The mounds became part of a shared heritage shaping regional identities for centuries. When Cahokia eventually rose within the Mississippi Valley, it inherited this legacy and expanded it dramatically. The city's monumental architecture represented both innovation and continuity, drawing upon traditions already thousands of years old. Today, many mound sites survive despite centuries of agriculture, development, and natural erosion. Some remain visible as gentle rises within fields. Others dominate landscapes much as they did when first constructed. Archaeologists continue, using new technologies such as LiDAR scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and aerial imaging to uncover hidden features and better understand these ancient monuments. Every discovery adds another piece to the puzzle while revealing additional questions. The mystery endures because the mounds continue speaking in fragments rather than complete sentences. They offer clues but rarely definitive answers. As evening settles across the forests and river valleys where these monuments still stand, one cannot help feeling a sense of wonder. The mound builders transformed ordinary earth into enduring expressions of memory, ceremony, and community. Their creations survived long after individual names were forgotten, challenging modern observers to imagine worlds very different from our own. Through their monuments, they remind us that some of history's greatest achievements are hidden not within written texts but within landscapes shaped by human hands. The mounds remain among America's most fascinating mysteries, silent yet powerful witnesses to civilizations whose stories continue unfolding through archaeology and imagination alike. Chapter 1, Segment 2, Chaco Canyon's Hidden Secrets and the Forgotten Fremont Worlds. As we leave behind the green river valleys and towering earthen monuments of the Mississippi Basin, our journey carries us westward into a very different landscape, one defined by vast deserts, sandstone mesas, endless horizons, and skies so clear that the stars seem almost close enough to touch. Deep within what is now northwestern New Mexico lies one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in North America. At first glance, the region appears harsh and isolated. Wind sweeps across open plains. Sparse vegetation clings to dry soil. Summer days bring intense heat, while winter nights can become bitterly cold. Yet nearly 1,000 years ago, this seemingly remote landscape became the center of one of the most remarkable cultural developments in ancient America. Hidden among the cliffs and canyons stands Chaco Canyon, a place of massive stone buildings, sophisticated engineering, astronomical alignments, and enduring mysteries that continue to challenge archaeologists today. Even now, after more than a century of research, scholars still debate how Chaco functioned, why it was built, and what ultimately caused its decline. To understand the mystery of Chaco Canyon, imagine arriving there around the year 1050. As you travel across the desert, the landscape appears largely empty. Then suddenly, enormous structures emerge from the canyon floor. Multi-story buildings constructed from carefully shaped sandstone blocks rise above the surrounding terrain. Some contain hundreds of rooms. Others include ceremonial spaces known as kivas, circular structures partially built below ground. Roads extend outward from the canyon in multiple directions, connecting distant communities across the region. The scale of construction is astonishing. These are not simple villages. They are monumental architectural complexes requiring extraordinary planning, labor, and organization. The largest of these structures, often referred to as great houses, remain among the most impressive achievements of ancient North American architecture. Pueblo Bonito, perhaps the most famous, contained hundreds of rooms arranged in a carefully designed layout. Its walls rose several stories high and required immense quantities of stone and timber. Yet the mystery deepens when we consider the environment. Chaco Canyon contains relatively limited local resources. Large trees suitable for construction did not grow nearby in sufficient numbers. Timber had to be transported from distant mountain ranges, sometimes over many miles of rugged terrain. The effort required to acquire and move these materials raises profound questions about social organization and motivation. Why invest such enormous resources into building these structures in a relatively remote canyon? What purpose did they serve? For decades, researchers assumed Chaco functioned primarily as a city where large populations lived permanently. More recent studies suggest a more complex picture. While people certainly resided within the canyon, some scholars argue that Chaco may have operated as a ceremonial, political, and economic center, drawing visitors from a vast surrounding region. Seasonal gatherings could have brought thousands of people together for rituals, trade, decision-making, and social interaction. The great houses may have served functions extending beyond ordinary residential use. Their architecture reflects planning and symbolism on a scale that suggests broader purposes. One of the most fascinating aspects of Chaco involves astronomy. Ancient inhabitants paid careful attention to celestial cycles, integrating observations of the sun, moon, and stars into architecture and ceremonial practices. Certain structures align with solstices and equinoxes. Nearby, a famous site known as the Sun Dagger appears to mark solar patterns through interactions between sunlight and carefully positioned rock formations. These alignments reveal sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and a deep interest in tracking time. For agricultural societies, understanding seasonal cycles was essential. Yet the precision and complexity of Chacoan astronomical features suggest motivations extending beyond practical concerns. The sky itself seems to have played a central role in cultural and spiritual life. Trade also contributed to Chaco's significance. Archaeological evidence indicates connections reaching far beyond the canyon. Exotic goods, including turquoise, macaws, copper bells, marine shells, and cacao, have been discovered at Chacoan sites. Some of these materials originated hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Their presence demonstrates participation in extensive exchange networks linking Chaco to distant regions across the Southwest and beyond. Such discoveries challenge older assumptions that ancient North American societies were isolated or technologically simple. Chaco existed within a dynamic world of movement, communication, and interaction. Yet, for all that archaeologists have learned, major questions remain unanswered. Why was Chaco built on such a scale? How was labor organized? What role did leadership play within society? Why were roads constructed across difficult terrain, sometimes extending in remarkably straight lines regardless of natural obstacles? And perhaps most importantly, why did Chaco decline? Around the late 12th century, many great houses ceased function, slowed. Communities dispersed into other regions. Environmental stress likely contributed. Prolonged drought affected agricultural productivity. Resource demands may have become increasingly difficult to sustain. Social and political changes probably played important roles as well. Yet no single explanation fully resolves the mystery. Like many ancient civilizations, Chaco appears to have transformed through a combination of interconnected factors. As twilight settles across the canyon and shadows stretch along ancient stone walls, Chaco's mysteries feel almost tangible. The silence of the desert contrasts sharply with the bustling world that once existed here. Thousands of people contributed to creating one of North America's most remarkable cultural centers, yet many aspects of their lives remain hidden from view. The great houses stand as reminders that remarkable civilizations flourished in places modern observers might never expect. Chaco Canyon challenges assumptions about what ancient societies could achieve and invites us to consider how much remains unknown. Beneath the desert sky, among sandstone cliffs and carefully aligned structures, the past continues whispering questions that have yet to receive complete answers. As the stars begin appearing above the canyon walls and the immense stone structures of Chaco gradually fade into shadow, our attention turns toward another mystery hidden within the landscapes of the American Southwest. Far from the great houses of Chaco Canyon, scattered across portions of present-day Utah, Colorado, Nevada, and surrounding regions lie traces of a civilization that remains far less famous but no less fascinating. These were the people archaeologists call the Fremont, a culture that flourished for centuries before gradually fading. From the archaeological record, their story is one of adaptation, creativity, and mystery, preserved in rock art panels, abandoned settlements, and artifacts scattered across some of the most dramatic landscapes in North America. Unlike Chaco, which announces its presence through monumental architecture, the Fremont left behind subtler clues. Their world must be reconstructed through fragments, observations, and unanswered questions. Imagine traveling through the canyonlands of Utah around the year 1000 CE. Towering sandstone cliffs rise above winding rivers. Narrow canyons cut through the landscape. High plateaus stretch toward distant mountain ranges. Within this environment, Fremont communities established settlements, cultivated crops, hunted game, and created distinctive artistic traditions. They occupied a region characterized by ecological diversity. Some communities lived near rivers supporting agriculture. Others relied more heavily on hunting, gathering, and seasonal movement. This flexibility became one of the defining characteristics of Fremont culture. Rather than depending entirely upon a single strategy, they adapted to local conditions and changing circumstances. Yet, despite decades of archaeological research, many aspects of their society remain mysterious. One of the most striking legacies of the Fremont people appears on canyon walls throughout the region. Rock art panels depict elongated human figures adorned with elaborate jewelry, headdresses, and symbolic designs. These images differ significantly from many other traditions found elsewhere in North America. Some figures appear almost supernatural. Others seem to represent individuals of importance within society. Their meanings remain uncertain. Were they depictions of religious beings, ancestors, leaders, or mythological characters? Did they serve ceremonial purposes, communicate stories, significant locations? The artists left no written explanations. As a result, the rock art continues, inspiring both scholarly investigation and public fascination. Every figure seems to invite interpretation while resisting definitive answers. Fremont settlements varied considerably across the region. Some consisted of small villages with pit houses partially dug into the ground. Others occupied strategic locations near water sources and fertile land. Agriculture played an important role, particularly the cultivation of corn. Yet hunting and gathering remained significant as well. Deer, rabbits, fish, seeds, and wild plants contributed to diets. This mixed economic strategy provided resilience within environments where rainfall and growing conditions could vary dramatically from year to year. Such adaptability may help explain how Fremont communities thrived for centuries across landscapes many modern observers consider challenging. Trade connected the Fremont to broader worlds. Artifacts recovered from archaeological sites reveal interactions with neighboring cultures, including communities influenced by Chacoan traditions. Shells, pottery, stone materials, and other goods moved through exchange networks linking distant regions. These connections demonstrate that Fremont communities were not isolated. They participated in broader systems of communication and interaction extending across much of the Southwest. Ideas likely traveled alongside material goods. Architectural techniques, ceremonial concepts, and artistic influences may have spread through repeated contact between communities. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding the Fremont concerns what happened to them. By around the 13th century, many characteristic Fremont settlements and cultural patterns begin disappearing from the archaeological record. Earlier generations of researchers often described this process as a disappearance, but modern perspectives are more nuanced. People do not simply vanish. Communities adapt, migrate, intermarry, and transform. Environmental changes likely influenced Fremont history. Drought conditions affected agriculture in certain regions. Population movements created new social dynamics. Relationships with neighboring cultures evolved. Rather than a sudden collapse, the evidence points toward gradual transformation. Yet exactly how these processes unfolded remains uncertain. Descendants may have integrated into other cultural traditions across the Southwest. New identities emerged while older archaeological patterns faded. The mystery persists because the available evidence remains incomplete. Daily life among the Fremont must have been deeply connected to the surrounding landscape. Families observed seasonal cycles, monitored weather patterns, and passed environmental knowledge from one generation to the next. Children learned practical skills essential for survival. Communities gathered for ceremonies and social activities reinforcing shared identities. Stories explained the origins of places and traditions. Though many details remain hidden, archaeology reveals a society rich in culture and capable of remarkable adaptation. The Fremont challenge modern assumptions about complexity. They did not build massive cities like Cahokia or monumental stone complexes on the scale of Chaco. Yet their achievements were significant in different ways. They mastered difficult environments, created distinctive artistic traditions, and maintained communities across vast regions for centuries. As night deepens across the canyonlands and moonlight illuminates ancient rock art panels, the mystery of the Fremont feels particularly powerful. Their figures continue gazing outward from stone walls just as they have for centuries. Settlements lie silent beneath desert skies. Trails once traveled by countless individuals have faded into the landscape, yet traces remain. Through those traces we glimpse a world both familiar and distant, a world of families, communities, traditions, and unanswered questions. Like Chaco Canyon, the Fremont remind us that much of America's ancient history remains hidden beneath the surface. Their story is not only about what archaeologists have discovered but also about what remains unknown. In that uncertainty lies much of the fascination. The past does not always reveal its secrets easily. Sometimes it leaves behind mysteries that continue inviting exploration long after the people who created them have passed into history. Chapter 1, Segment 3, Ancient Copper Highways and the Newark Earthworks Mystery. As our journey through America's forgotten civilizations continues, we leave behind the sandstone canyons of the Southwest and travel once again toward the forests, rivers, and lakes of the eastern half of the continent. Here, hidden beneath modern towns, farms, and woodlands, lies evidence of one of the most astonishing mysteries in ancient North American history. It is a mystery not centered upon a single city or civilization, but upon movement itself. Thousands of years before, European explorers crossed the Atlantic, before horses returned to the continent, and long before roads connected distant regions, ancient peoples were already participating in trade networks so extensive that they linked communities separated by hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles. Copper. Today, copper seems ordinary. It is used in wiring, electronics, plumbing, and countless everyday objects. Yet thousands of years ago, native copper represented something extraordinary. It could be shaped into tools, ornaments, ceremonial objects, and symbols of prestige. Most importantly, significant deposits existed in only a few places. One of the richest sources in North America lay near the shores of what is now Lake Superior, particularly in regions of present-day Michigan. From these remote northern landscapes emerged a trade network that continues to fascinate archaeologists because of its scale, complexity, and age. Imagine standing on the rocky shoreline of Lake Superior around 4,000 years ago. Dense forests stretch toward the horizon. The lake itself appears almost ocean-like, its waters extending far beyond sight. Nearby, groups of people work with native copper exposed naturally within the landscape. Unlike copper, that must be smelted from, or much of this material could be collected and shaped using relatively simple techniques. Over generations, communities developed methods for extracting, hammering, and crafting copper into useful and symbolic objects. Yet the real mystery begins when archaeologists trace where these objects eventually ended up. Copper artifacts originating from the Great Lakes region have been discovered hundreds of miles away in places where no local copper sources existed. Some traveled into the Ohio Valley. Others reached the southeast. Still more appeared within ceremonial contexts associated with cultures separated by vast distances. The question is not whether trade occurred. The evidence clearly demonstrates that it did. The question is how these networks functioned so effectively across such enormous geographic areas. Consider the journey of a single copper ornament. It may have begun near Lake Superior, shaped by skilled hands into a decorative object. From there it entered a chain of exchanges linking community to community. A traveler carried it southward along rivers and trails. Another exchange occurred. Then another. Stories accompanied the object. News traveled with it. Relationships were reinforced through the act of exchange. Eventually, perhaps months or even years later, the copper reached a ceremonial center hundreds of miles from its source. Every stage of that journey required communication, trust, and cooperation among people who may never have seen the mines from which the material originated. The object became a messenger, linking distant worlds together. What makes these networks particularly mysterious is their age. Evidence suggests that long-distance copper exchange began thousands of years before many of the famous civilizations discussed in world history. Ancient North Americans were creating continent-spanning systems of interaction during periods often dismissed as technologically simple. Yet the archaeological record reveals remarkable sophistication. Trade routes crossed forests, rivers, wetlands, and mountains. Communities maintained relationships across generations. Valuable materials moved with surprising efficiency. Such achievements challenge outdated assumptions about ancient North American societies. Copper itself often appears in ceremonial contexts, suggesting that its significance extended beyond practical utility. Some objects show little evidence of everyday use. Instead, they seem to have functioned as symbols of status, identity, spirituality, or social connection. The rarity of copper in many regions increased. Its value. Possessing such materials may have communicated participation in broader networks, reaching far beyond local communities. In this sense, copper became more than metal. It became a visible expression of connection. Archaeologists continue debating the precise mechanisms underlying these exchanges. Were there specialized traders traveling long distances? Did goods move gradually through chains of local interactions? How important were ceremonial gatherings in facilitating exchange? The evidence supports multiple possibilities. What remains undeniable is that North America contained communication networks of extraordinary reach long before modern transportation existed. Rivers played crucial roles. Waterways connected distant regions. The Great Lakes, Ohio River, Mississippi River, and countless smaller waterways formed a vast transportation system supporting interaction across much of the continent. Through these routes flowed not only copper but also shells, stones, ideas, technologies, and traditions. Every traded object represented a relationship. Every relationship contributed to a larger web connecting civilizations we often study separately. The mystery deepens when we consider how little physical evidence remains of the people coordinating these exchanges. The copper survives. The routes themselves largely do not. Trails disappeared beneath forests and later development. Conversations vanished into time. Individual names were forgotten. Yet the artifacts remain, quietly testifying to worlds of interaction that archaeology continues uncovering piece by piece. As evening settles across the Great Lakes and moonlight reflects upon ancient waters, it becomes clear that the copper trade networks reveal something profound about human history. Long before modern infrastructure connected continents, people found ways to build relationships across immense distances. They exchanged materials, knowledge, and stories. They created networks capable of spanning environments as diverse as northern forests and southern river valleys. Through copper, we glimpse a continent alive with movement, curiosity, and cooperation. The mystery is not merely how far the metal traveled. The mystery is how effectively human beings connected themselves to one another across a landscape of extraordinary scale. In those connections lies one of the most fascinating stories in America's forgotten past. As dawn begins to illuminate the rolling landscapes of present-day Ohio, another mystery emerges from the earth itself. Unlike the copper trade routes which reveal ancient connections, through movement this mystery is rooted in place. Scattered across portions of the Ohio countryside are some of the most remarkable earthworks ever constructed in North America. Among them, none are more impressive or more puzzling than the Newark earthworks, a vast complex of geometric embankments, circles, octagons, and connecting avenues built nearly 2,000 years ago by the people associated with the Hopewell tradition. Even today, despite centuries of research, archaeologists continue asking a fundamental question. Why were these enormous structures built? To appreciate the scale of Newark, imagine approaching the site during this height. Instead of modern roads and neighborhoods, you would encounter an immense ceremonial landscape extending across hundreds of acres. Earthen walls rise from the ground, carefully shaped into geometric forms of extraordinary precision. Massive circles connect to long avenues. An enormous octagon stretches across the landscape. Distances between structures were measured with remarkable accuracy. The builders lacked metal surveying equipment, yet the resulting designs demonstrate sophisticated understanding of geometry and planning. Viewed from ground level, the earthworks would have appeared impressive. Viewed from above, they reveal patterns so precise that modern observers often struggle to believe they were created without advanced technology. Yet they were, and that reality only deepens the mystery. The Newark earthworks form part of a broader tradition associated with the Hopewell culture, which flourished throughout portions of eastern North America between approximately 100 BCE and 500 CE. During this period, communities constructed ceremonial centers unlike anything else on the continent. These were not cities filled with permanent populations. Instead, many appear to have functioned as gathering places where people assembled periodically for ceremonies, exchanges, rituals, and social interaction. Newark may have been one of the most important such centers, yet its exact purpose remains uncertain. One of the most fascinating discoveries concerning Newark involves astronomy. Researchers have found that portions of the earthworks align with significant lunar events. The Great Octagon, in particular, appears connected to the complex cycle of the moon's movements across the horizon. Tracking these patterns requires careful observation over many years because lunar cycles unfold more slowly and subtly than solar events such as solstices. The precision of these alignments suggests that Newark functioned, at least partly, as an astronomical observatory. Yet this raises further questions. Why invest so much effort into monitoring the moon? What meanings did lunar cycles hold within Hopewell society? How were astronomical observations integrated into ceremonial life? The answers remain elusive. The astronomical evidence demonstrates sophistication but does not fully explain motivation. Construction itself presents another mystery. Building Newark required moving immense quantities of earth. Workers carried soil basket by basket, shaping embankments that stretched across great distances. Such labor demanded planning, coordination, and shared purpose. Yet Hopewell society does not appear to have possessed centralized governments comparable to those found in ancient empires elsewhere in the world. Instead, communities seem to have cooperated voluntarily within broader networks of cultural and ceremonial relationships. This suggests a remarkable capacity for collective action. People came together not because they were forced, but because the project held meaning significant enough to justify enormous effort. Understanding that meaning remains one of archaeology's greatest challenges. Imagine attending a gathering at Newark nearly 2,000 years ago. Travelers arrive from distant communities, carrying gifts, trade goods, and stories. Ceremonies unfold within the geometric enclosures. Fires illuminate earthen walls beneath the night sky. The moon rises according to patterns carefully observed by generations of knowledgeable individuals. Music, ritual, exchange, and social interaction transform the landscape into a center of activity. Such scenes help explain why the earthworks mattered, even if their precise symbolism remains beyond recovery. They were places where communities connected with one another and perhaps with larger understandings of the cosmos. Over time, however, Newark's original functions changed. The Hopewell interaction sphere transformed. Ceremonial traditions evolved. Communities reorganized. The earthworks remained, but the world that created them gradually disappeared. Centuries later, forests covered portions of the site. Agriculture altered the landscape. Modern development erased some features, while preserving others. Yet enough survived to reveal the extraordinary achievement represented. By Newark. Today, archaeologists continue studying the site using technologies unavailable to earlier generations. Aerial surveys, LiDAR mapping, and astronomical analysis have revealed details invisible from the ground. Each discovery adds depth to the mystery. The more researchers learn about Newark, the more impressive it becomes. Yet complete understanding remains elusive. Why construct geometric forms on such a scale? Why align them with lunar cycles? Why invest so much effort in creating spaces that seem designed primarily for ceremony rather than everyday life? These questions persist because the builders left no written explanations behind. As the sun rises higher above the Ohio landscape and shadows retreat from the ancient embankments, Newark reminds us that mystery often survives even in places extensively studied. The earthworks stand as evidence of intelligence, cooperation, and vision. They reveal societies capable of observing celestial cycles with remarkable precision and translating that knowledge into monumental architecture. At the same time, they preserve unanswered questions that continue inspiring curiosity. In a world increasingly mapped, measured, and documented, Newark offers a rare reminder that some of the greatest mysteries are hidden not in distant lands but beneath familiar ground. The builders shaped Earth into geometry, landscape into meaning, and observation into monument. Though their voices have faded, the earthworks remain, inviting each new generation to wonder why. Chapter 2, Segment 1. The Vanished Roanoke Colony and the Meaning of CROATOAN. As we leave behind the ancient earthworks, forgotten trade routes, and mysterious civilizations of prehistoric North America, our journey moves forward in time to one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in American history. Unlike the mysteries of Cahokia, Chaco Canyon, or the Newark earthworks, this story unfolds during a period for which written records exist. Names were recorded, ships were documented, letters survived, dates were preserved. Yet despite all of this information, the central question remains unanswered more than 4 centuries later. What happened to the settlers of the Roanoke colony? Their disappearance has fascinated historians, archaeologists, writers, and dreamers for generations. It is a mystery built not upon missing artifacts or silent ruins, but upon the sudden absence of people. Entire communities leave traces behind. Buildings decay. Objects remain. Yet at Roanoke, something different happened. When help finally arrived, the colonists were gone. No bodies were found. No signs of battle appeared. No clear explanation emerged. Only a few cryptic clues remained, and among them one word would become legendary: CROATOAN. To understand the mystery, imagine the eastern coastline of North America in the late 16th century. European powers are competing for influence and territory. England, eager to challenge Spanish dominance, hopes to establish permanent settlements in the New World. The Atlantic Ocean remains dangerous and unpredictable. Communication between continents is slow. A single voyage can take months. Storms, disease, and shortages threaten every expedition. Within this uncertain world, English leaders sponsor efforts to establish colonies along the Atlantic coast. One of the most ambitious attempts focuses on an island near what is now North Carolina. The location seems promising, protected. Waterways offer access to the interior. Natural resources appear abundant. The region occupies a strategic position from which future expansion might occur. In 1587, a group of approximately 115 settlers arrives at Roanoke Island under the leadership of John White. Unlike some earlier expeditions, this group includes women and children. Their presence signals a significant change in purpose. This is not merely an exploratory mission or military outpost. It is intended to become permanent community. Families begin establishing homes. Gardens are planted. Daily routines emerge. Among the settlers is White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, who soon gives birth to a child. The infant Virginia Dare becomes famous as the first English child born in what would later become the United States. For a brief moment, optimism seems possible. The colony has begun. Yet beneath the surface, challenges already exist. Relations with local indigenous communities are complex. Food supplies remain uncertain. The settlement depends heavily upon support from England, support that cannot arrive quickly when needed. Recognizing these difficulties, the colonists persuade John White to return to England and obtain additional supplies. White reluctantly agrees, leaving behind his family and fellow settlers while promising to return as soon as possible. Under normal circumstances, the journey might have lasted only a matter of months. History, however, had other plans. Soon after White reaches England, international events disrupt everything. Conflict with Spain intensifies. The threat posed by the Spanish Armada dominates English priorities. Ships that might have supported Roanoke are diverted toward military needs. White finds himself trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Months become years. Each passing season increases uncertainty regarding the fate of the colony. Imagine his frustration. Somewhere across the Atlantic, his daughter, granddaughter, and friends wait for assistance that never arrives. Yet he remains unable to reach them. Finally, in 1590, after 3 long years, White secures passage back to Roanoke. The voyage itself is difficult. Storms complicate navigation. Delays occur. By the time he approaches the settlement, expectations must have been mixed. Perhaps the colony survived and expanded. Perhaps hardships occurred. Whatever he anticipated, the reality proved stranger than anyone imagined. Upon arrival, White discovers that the settlement is deserted. Houses have been dismantled. Buildings are gone. Yet there are no signs of violence. No graves appear. No obvious evidence suggests a massacre. Instead, the site seems deliberately abandoned. The colonists have left. But where? Searching for clues, White notices something carved into a wooden post. CROATOAN. Nearby, the letters CRO are carved into a tree. These markings immediately attract attention because the colonists had previously discussed a plan. If they relocated voluntarily, they would leave a message indicating their destination. The word CROATOAN referred both to a nearby island and to an indigenous group inhabiting the region. At first glance, the clue appears promising. Perhaps the settlers moved and integrated with friendly communities. Perhaps they relocated to a more favorable location. Yet circumstances once again intervene. Weather conditions prevent a thorough search. Storms force White's ship away from the coast. He never returns to investigate further. The colonists vanish into history. What followed was centuries of speculation. Some proposed that the settlers were attacked and killed. Others suggested starvation, disease, or conflict. One enduring theory argues that they joined indigenous communities, gradually blending into local populations through marriage and cultural exchange. Historical accounts from later periods occasionally mention indigenous groups, possessing European features or objects fueling such ideas. Archaeological discoveries have provided intriguing hints but no definitive answers. Artifacts linked to English settlers have been found at various sites, yet interpreting their significance remains difficult. The challenge is that human history rarely leaves perfectly clear evidence. Objects move, communities relocate, memories evolve. Every clue generates additional questions. What makes Roanoke so compelling is the balance between evidence and uncertainty. Unlike purely legendary mysteries, Roanoke is unquestionably real. We know the colonists existed. We know where they settled. We know they disappeared before white returned. Yet the crucial details remain missing. The story occupies a space between documented history and unresolved mystery. As evening settles across the coastal forests and marshes of North Carolina, one can almost imagine the settlers facing difficult decisions. Food shortages, environmental pressures, and changing relationships with neighboring communities may have forced adaptation. Perhaps they relocated in search of better opportunities. Perhaps survival required abandoning the original colony entirely. Whatever happened, the evidence suggests a more complex story than simple disappearance. The people of Roanoke did not evaporate into thin air. They lived, struggled, made choices, and responded to circumstances. The tragedy is not that they vanished without explanation. The tragedy is that history preserved only fragments of their story. Those fragments continue inspiring curiosity because they remind us how much can still be lost, even within recorded history. As the Atlantic waves roll gently against the shores of the Outer Banks and moonlight reflects across the waters surrounding Roanoke Island, our attention turns toward the single clue that transformed a colonial disappearance into one of the most famous mysteries in American history. The word carved into a wooden post was not a random message. It was not a desperate cry for help. It was simply one word, CROATOAN. Yet few words in American history have inspired so much speculation. For more than 400 years, historians, archaeologists, and amateur investigators have debated its meaning. Was it the key to solving the mystery? Was it merely one clue among many? Or did generations of fascination transform a practical message into something far more mysterious than the settlers ever intended? To understand why this single word became so important, we must return to the moment John White arrived at the abandoned colony in 1590. After years of delay, uncertainty, and concern, White expected to find either a struggling settlement or evidence of disaster. Instead, he encountered silence. The houses had been dismantled rather than destroyed. Fences had been removed. Valuable items were absent. There were no obvious signs of attack. This detail matters because the colonists had previously agreed upon a simple communication system. If circumstances forced them to relocate, they would carve the name of their destination somewhere visible. If they left under duress, they would include a cross-shaped symbol indicating danger. No such symbol appeared. Instead, White found the word CROATOAN clearly carved into a post. To him, the meaning may have seemed relatively straightforward. CROATOAN referred to both a nearby island and the indigenous people living there. In theory, the settlers had left instructions regarding where they had gone. Yet because White was unable to investigate immediately, certainty slipped away. Storms prevented a search. Ships' absence of follow-up transformed a practical message into an enduring mystery. One of the most Widely accepted theories today suggests that the colonists integrated with local indigenous communities. This explanation has several strengths. The settlers faced significant challenges. Food shortages threatened survival. Relations with some neighboring groups were tense, yet others were more cooperative. Indigenous communities possessed extensive knowledge of local environments, resources, and survival strategies. Joining such communities may have represented the most logical response to increasingly difficult conditions. Historical accounts from later periods occasionally mention indigenous groups whose members appeared to possess European ancestry or who used objects associated with English settlers. While such evidence remains inconclusive, it provides intriguing support for the integration theory. Archaeology has contributed additional clues. Excavations at various sites associated with indigenous settlements have uncovered European artifacts dating to the appropriate period. Some researchers interpret these findings as evidence that at least some colonists lived among local populations after abandoning Roanoke. Yet archaeology rarely provides simple answers. Objects can travel through trade. Communities exchange goods without exchanging populations. Interpreting artifacts requires caution. Every discovery adds information while leaving room for alternative explanations. This uncertainty helps explain why the mystery persists. The evidence points toward possibilities rather than definitive conclusions. Another theory proposes that the colonists attempted to relocate elsewhere and encountered disaster along the way. Coastal environments can be unforgiving. Storms, disease, food shortages, and conflict all posed serious risks. Community attempting to establish a new settlement faced numerous challenges. If difficulties arose after departure from Roanoke, evidence might have been scattered across wide geographic areas rather than concentrated at a single site. Some researchers have explored locations inland from the original colony, searching for traces of English occupation. A few intriguing discoveries have emerged, including artifacts suggesting possible movement into the interior. Yet none provide a complete solution. The mystery remains fragmented, much like the evidence itself. More dramatic explanations have appeared over the centuries as well. Stories of massacres, conspiracies, secret rescues, and hidden settlements entered popular imagination. Some accounts claimed that Spanish forces destroyed the colony. Others proposed attacks by hostile groups. Such theories often capture public attention because they offer dramatic narratives. Yet most lack strong supporting evidence. The absence of signs indicating violence at the abandoned settlement presents a significant challenge for many catastrophic explanations. If the colonists suffered sudden destruction, why leave a relocation message? Why dismantle buildings carefully? Why remove belongings? The evidence seems more consistent with an organized departure than with immediate disaster. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Roanoke mystery is what it reveals about historical uncertainty. Modern people often imagine that written records provide complete understanding of past events. Roanoke demonstrates otherwise. We know names, dates, locations, and circumstances surrounding the colony, yet crucial details remain inaccessible. Documents were never written or failed to survive. Witnesses died. Opportunities for investigation were lost. History preserved enough information to create questions, but not enough to answer them completely. The result is a mystery existing at the intersection of evidence and imagination. Every generation revisits the story, bringing new methods and perspectives. Modern technologies continue contributing to research. Archaeologists use advanced mapping techniques, chemical analysis, and careful excavation to investigate sites connected to the mystery. Historians re-examine documents seeking overlooked details. Genetic studies occasionally enter discussions regarding possible descendants. Each approach offers potential insights, yet complete certainty remains elusive. The passage of more than 4 centuries ensures that some evidence has been lost forever. Still, the search continues because the mystery speaks to something deeper than historical curiosity alone. Roanoke represents a moment when human lives disappeared from the written record. Real people, families, children, laborers, leaders faced challenges, made decisions, and experienced outcomes history failed to preserve clearly. As night deepens across the Carolina coast and the sound of waves drifts through the darkness, it becomes easier to understand why the mystery endures. The word CROATOAN remains powerful not because it solves the puzzle, but because it reminds us how close we can come to understanding the past while still remaining uncertain. Somewhere between documented history and lost memory lies the fate of the Roanoke colonists. Perhaps future discoveries will provide greater clarity. Perhaps the mystery will never be resolved completely. Either way, the story continues inviting reflection. It reminds us that history is not merely a collection of known facts. It is also a landscape of unanswered questions, where even a single word carved into wood can echo across centuries. Chapter 2, Segment 2. The Lost City of Etzanoa and America's Stonehenge. As we leave behind the windswept shores of Roanoke Island and travel westward across the North American continent, the landscape changes dramatically. Forests gradually give way to rolling prairies that stretch toward distant horizons. Rivers wind through tall grasses. Herds of bison once moved across these open lands in numbers almost impossible to imagine today. For centuries, European explorers viewed these vast regions as sparsely populated frontiers. Yet, hidden beneath the fields and river valleys of present-day Kansas lies one of the most surprising archaeological discoveries in recent American history. It is the story of Etzanoa, a city so large that when Spanish explorers first encountered it in the 16th century, they described settlements extending for miles along the river. Then, somehow, the city faded from historical memory. For generations, historians debated whether it had ever existed at all. Some believed the early accounts were exaggerated. Others assumed the city had been lost forever. Yet modern archaeology has revealed that the legends were grounded in reality. The rediscovery of Etzanoa reminds us that some of America's greatest mysteries are not hidden in remote deserts or deep forests but beneath landscapes people pass every day without realizing what lies beneath their feet. To understand the mystery of Etzanoa, imagine traveling through the Great Plains around the year 1600. The Arkansas River cuts through fertile valleys where large communities have established settlements supported by agriculture, hunting, and trade. The city stretches for miles. Thousands of people live in circular grass-thatched houses arranged across the landscape. Fields of corn, beans, squash, and other crops surround the settlements. Trade routes connect the region to distant communities. Life unfolds according to seasonal rhythms shaped by both agriculture and the movement of wildlife across the plains. When Spanish explorer Juan de Oñate arrived in the region in 1601, he described an enormous settlement unlike anything he expected to encounter. His expedition recorded villages extending along the river for several miles. population may have numbered in the tens of thousands, making Etzanoa one of the largest settlements in North America at the time. Yet despite these descriptions, the city eventually vanished from maps and memory. The mystery begins with this disappearance from historical awareness. How could such a large settlement be forgotten? Part of the answer lies in the nature of the city itself. Unlike stone-built civilizations whose monuments survive for centuries, Etzanoa was constructed primarily from organic materials. Houses built from wood, grass, and earth gradually disappeared once abandoned. The Great Plains reclaimed the landscape. Generations passed. Written records remained scattered and obscure. Without visible ruins to attract attention, the city faded into legend. Historians debated whether the Spanish accounts described a real place or merely reflected exaggeration. For centuries, certainty remained elusive. The rediscovery of Etzanoa emerged through a combination of historical detective work and archaeological investigation. Researchers carefully compared early Spanish descriptions with geographical evidence. Artifacts began appearing across portions of modern Kansas. Excavations revealed signs of extensive occupation. Pottery fragments, stone tools, house remains, and other materials confirmed that large communities had indeed flourished in the region. Slowly, the outlines of the lost city began re-emerging from beneath the soil. The realization was extraordinary. A major urban center had existed in the heart of North America, only to be forgotten for centuries before being rediscovered through patient research. Yet the mystery extends beyond the city's location. Questions remain regarding its rise, organization, and eventual decline. How did such a large settlement develop on the Great Plains? What social systems coordinated life among thousands of inhabitants? How extensive were its trade connections? What relationships existed with neighboring communities? Archaeologists continue exploring these questions. Evidence suggests that Etzanoa occupied a strategic position within regional exchange networks. The city's ideas and cultural influences across considerable distances. Like many large settlements throughout history, Etzanoa appears to have thrived because of its ability to connect people and resources. Another mystery involves the city's eventual decline. Historical records suggest that conflict, disease, environmental pressures, and broader regional changes may have contributed. European contact introduced new challenges throughout the continent, including epidemics that affected indigenous populations long before many communities encountered Europeans directly. Trade networks shifted, alliances changed, social landscapes transformed. The decline of Etzanoa likely reflected a combination of factors rather than a single catastrophic event. Yet many details remain uncertain. The archaeological record offers clues but not complete narratives. This uncertainty contributes to the city's enduring fascination. Etzanoa challenges long-standing assumptions about North American history. For generations, many people imagined the Great Plains as sparsely populated prior to European expansion. The rediscovery of the city reveals a far more complex reality. Large, organized communities flourished in regions often overlooked by traditional historical narratives. Their achievements remained hidden not because they were insignificant, but because the physical traces they left behind blended gradually into the landscape. As evening settles across the Kansas prairie and golden light stretches across fields that once supported one of North America's largest settlements, Etzanoa reminds us that history can disappear surprisingly easily. Entire cities may fade from memory when buildings decay. Records are lost and landscapes change. Yet archaeology possesses a remarkable ability to recover forgotten stories. Beneath ordinary ground lie traces of extraordinary worlds. The rediscovery of Etsonoa demonstrates that America's past remains far richer and more mysterious than many people realize. Even today, there may be other lost places waiting quietly beneath fields, forests, and river valleys, their stories not yet fully told. As darkness settles over the Great Plains and our attention shifts eastward toward the forests of New England, another mystery emerges, one that has inspired debate, speculation, and controversy for generations. Unlike Etsonoa, whose existence was forgotten and later rediscovered, this mystery has remained visible all along, hidden among the woods of present-day New Hampshire stands a collection of stone structures, walls, chambers, and alignments, known popularly as America's Stonehenge. For more than a century, visitors, researchers, and enthusiasts have asked the same question: who built these structures and why? The site has inspired comparisons to the famous prehistoric monument in England, though the similarities are often debated. Some see evidence of ancient astronomy. Others believe the structures were created by colonial farmers. More speculative theories propose transatlantic visitors, lost civilizations, or forgotten cultures. The challenge is that the evidence can be interpreted in multiple ways, making America's Stonehenge one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries. In the United States, imagine arriving at the site before modern roads, signs, and research facilities existed. The forest surrounds a hilltop scattered with stone features unlike those typically associated with natural landscapes. Walls intersect at unusual angles. Chambers built from large stone slabs create enclosed spaces partially embedded within the earth. Certain openings appear feels ancient and purposeful. To others, it resembles the practical stonework often created by farmers clearing fields and managing land. The mystery begins precisely because both interpretations contain elements of plausibility. Understanding the debate requires examining the structures themselves. The site includes a network of stone walls, standing stones, carved features, and chambers. Some alignments appear connected to astronomical events such as solstices and equinoxes. Supporters of an ancient origin argue that these alignments indicate deliberate design, perhaps related to ceremonial observations of the sky. They point out that many ancient cultures around the world incorporated astronomical knowledge into architecture. If the alignments are intentional, they may reflect sophisticated understanding of seasonal cycles. Yet critics respond that alignments can sometimes emerge coincidentally, especially when numerous structures exist within a landscape. Distinguishing deliberate design from chance remains challenging. Historical evidence complicates the picture further. New England contains countless stone walls built by farmers during the colonial period and afterward. Clearing agricultural land often produced large quantities of stone that needed to be moved somewhere. Walls marked property boundaries, contained livestock, and served practical purposes. Some researchers therefore argue that America's Stonehenge may represent an unusually complex example of historical stonework. Rather than an ancient ceremonial center, certain chambers resemble root cellars or storage spaces, common in colonial contexts. If this interpretation is correct, the mystery becomes less about prehistoric astronomy and more about how later generations misunderstood ordinary structures. Yet the site continues resisting simple explanations. Archaeological investigations have uncovered evidence suggesting that portions of the hilltop may have been used over long periods. Artifacts from different eras appear within the surrounding area. Some findings hint at activities predating colonial settlement. Others support more recent interpretations. The result is a layered historical landscape where multiple periods of human use may overlap. Such complexity makes definitive conclusions difficult. Sites rarely preserve perfectly clear records of their own histories. Instead, they accumulate traces left by different generations, each adding new layers to the story. Public fascination often focuses on more dramatic possibilities. Could ancient travelers from Europe have reached North America long before Columbus? Did forgotten civilizations leave behind astronomical observatories hidden within New England forests? Such theories capture imagination because they offer exciting alternatives to conventional narratives. Yet most professional archaeologists remain cautious. Extraordinary claims require strong evidence. So far, no definitive proof has emerged linking the site to ancient transatlantic visitors or lost civilizations. This does not diminish the mystery. On the contrary, uncertainty itself remains fascinating. The challenge lies not in proving sensational theories, but in understanding a complex landscape whose history may involve multiple phases of use and interpretation. Astronomy remains one of the most intriguing aspects of the site. Researchers continue studying alignments associated with solar and lunar events. Throughout human history, observing the sky has been important for agriculture, navigation, ceremony, and timekeeping. If some alignments were intentional, they could reflect efforts to track seasonal cycles. Yet, determining exactly when such alignments were established is difficult. A structure aligned with the solstice today may have served very different purposes when originally built. Context matters, and context is often incomplete. This uncertainty places among American mysteries because it sits at the intersection of archaeology, astronomy, folklore, and public imagination. Unlike vanished cities or lost colonies, the site remains accessible. Visitors can walk among the stones, examine the structures, and form their own impressions. Some leave convinced they have encountered evidence of ancient knowledge. Others see practical stonework shaped by more recent history. Both responses reflect the site's enduring ability to provoke curiosity. As moonlight filters through the trees and shadows stretch across the stone chambers, the mystery feels almost tangible. The structures have witnessed centuries of changing interpretations. Farmers, antiquarians, archaeologists, tourists, and researchers have all projected questions onto the landscape, yet definitive answers remain elusive. Perhaps that is part of the appeal. America's Stonehenge reminds us that mysteries do not always persist because evidence is entirely absent. Sometimes they endure because the available evidence supports multiple possibilities. In such cases, the landscape itself becomes a conversation between past and present. Every stone invites questions. Every alignment suggests meaning. And every generation returns hoping to uncover what previous generations may have missed. Whether the site ultimately proves to be an ancient observatory, a colonial construction, or a combination of influences from different periods, its greatest significance may lie in its ability to inspire wonder. Beneath the quiet forests of New England, the stones continue waiting, keeping their secrets a little longer. Chapter 2, Segment 3, White Sands' ancient footprints and mysteries still hidden beneath America. As we leave behind the stone chambers of New England and travel southwest across the continent, once more, we arrive in a landscape so unusual that it almost seems to belong to another world. Vast fields of brilliant white gypsum sand stretch toward distant mountains beneath an enormous desert sky. Winds sweep across the dunes, constantly reshaping the surface and erasing traces of anything that passes over them. At first glance, this appears to be one of the last places where evidence of ancient human activity might survive. Yet hidden beneath these shifting sands lies one of the most important and controversial archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. Here, within what is now known as White Sands National Park in New Mexico, researchers uncovered a series of ancient human footprints preserved within layers of sediment. These footprints have sparked intense scientific debate because of what they may reveal about the earliest human presence in North America. For decades, many archaeologists believed that the first people arrived on the continent around 13,000 years ago. The White Sands footprints appeared to challenge that assumption dramatically. If the dating was correct, humans had walked across this landscape thousands of years earlier than expected. The implications were enormous, raising questions not only about migration but also about how much remains unknown regarding America's distant past. To appreciate the significance of the discovery, imagine the landscape not as it appears today but as it existed tens of thousands of years ago. The brilliant gypsum dunes had not yet formed in their modern configuration. Instead, the region contained lakes, wetlands, and grasslands capable of supporting diverse forms of life. Mammoths roamed the area. Giant ground sloths moved through the vegetation. Ancient camels and other now extinct animals inhabited the region. Human beings, according to the footprints, walked among them. The tracks preserved within the sediment record moments of ordinary life that somehow survived across unimaginable spans of time. A person walked beside a lake. A child followed behind an adult. Hunters crossed muddy ground. Animals moved through the same environment. Then, through a combination of geological processes, those fleeting moments became part of the archaeological record. The discovery itself required careful observation and modern technology. Researchers identified trackways buried beneath the surface and began investigating their age. Initial dating suggested that some footprints were between 21,000 and 23,000 years old. If accurate, this timeline placed humans in North America during the last glacial maximum, a period when massive ice sheets covered large portions of the continent. Such a conclusion challenged long-standing models regarding migration into the Americas. For decades, many scholars argued that people arrived after ice sheets began retreating, opening migration routes southward. The White Sands evidence suggested a more complicated story. Yet, extraordinary claims inevitably attract scrutiny. Scientists debated the methods used to determine the age of the footprints. Dating relied partly upon seeds and plant material found within associated sediment layers. Critics questioned whether those materials accurately reflected the age of the footprints themselves. Additional studies followed. Researchers employed alternative dating techniques, examined geological contexts, and sought independent confirmation. The debate became one of the most significant discussions in modern archaeology because the stakes extended far beyond a single site. If humans were present in North America 23,000 years ago, established narratives regarding migration, settlement, and adaptation required reconsideration. What makes the White Sands mystery particularly fascinating is that it combines cutting-edge science with profoundly human moments. Unlike stone tools or ancient structures, footprints preserve direct evidence of movement. They record actions rather than objects. Looking at a footprint, one can imagine the individual who created it in a way that feels unusually immediate. A footprint captures a single step, a brief interaction between a human being and the ground beneath them. Thousands of years later, that interaction still exists. Some trackways suggest adults traveling with children. Others reveal encounters between humans and large animals. One famous sequence appears to show a person carrying a child while moving across wet ground. Such details transform distant prehistory into something deeply personal. They remind us that ancient people were not abstract figures within archaeological theories. They were individuals navigating landscapes, caring for families, and making decisions much as people do today. The scientific debate surrounding white sands continues, though increasing evidence has strengthened arguments supporting an earlier human presence. Researchers remain cautious as science depends upon continual testing and refinement. Yet, regardless of the final chronology, the site has already transformed discussions about North American prehistory. It demonstrates how new discoveries can challenge assumptions once considered secure. More importantly, it highlights how much remains hidden beneath seemingly ordinary landscapes. For generations, countless visitors crossed the White Sands region without realizing that traces of ancient human lives lay preserved beneath their feet. The footprints existed all along. Only recently did science develop the tools and perspectives necessary to recognize their significance. As evening settles, across the dunes and the desert sky begins filling with stars, the mystery of White Sands feels both ancient and immediate. Every footprint represents a moment frozen in time, a connection between present observers and people who lived during a world radically different from our own. Yet those individuals remain familiar in essential ways. They walked, traveled, cared for children, and adapted to changing environments. Their footprints remind us that human history stretches deeper into the past than we often imagine. They also remind us that the continent still holds secrets capable of reshaping our understanding of its earliest chapters. As darkness spreads across the desert and the stars shine above the silent dunes of White Sands, our journey arrives at one final mystery, one that encompasses all the others. Throughout this documentary, we have explored lost cities, forgotten civilizations, ancient trade routes, mysterious earthworks, vanished colonies, unusual stone structures, and footprints preserved from deep prehistory. Each story revealed something remarkable about the past. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not any single site or discovery. It is the realization that countless mysteries remain undiscovered. Beneath modern cities, forests, rivers, deserts, mountains, and farmlands, traces of human history continue waiting to be found. Every generation of archaeologists uncovers evidence that previous generations never suspected existed. New technologies reveal hidden landscapes. Ancient settlements emerge from beneath vegetation. Long-forgotten routes reappear through remote sensing. The more researchers learn about America's past, the clearer it becomes that much remains unknown. The continent itself functions like an enormous archive, preserving stories that have yet to be read. Imagine looking down upon North America from high above. The modern landscape appears familiar. Cities glow with electric light. Highways connect regions. Farms cover vast areas. Forests stretch across mountains and river valleys. Yet beneath this contemporary surface lie layers of history accumulated across thousands of years. Ancient campsites rest beneath fields. Ceremonial centers lie hidden beneath forests. Trade routes once followed by countless travelers have disappeared beneath roads and suburbs. Entire settlements may remain undiscovered simply because no one has searched in the right place yet. This reality surprises many people because modern maps create an illusion of completeness. We assume that every significant location has already been identified. Archaeology repeatedly demonstrates otherwise. New discoveries occur regularly, often in places considered thoroughly explored. 1. Reason so many mysteries remain hidden involves the limitations of visibility. Most ancient reeds and other organic materials gradually disappeared after abandonment. Forests reclaimed. Settlements. Rivers changed course. Floods buried sites beneath sediment. Grasslands concealed traces of occupation. Unlike monumental stone ruins that dominate landscapes for centuries, many North American sites blend naturally into their surroundings once human maintenance ceases. Detecting them requires patience, expertise, and increasingly sophisticated technology. Fortunately, modern archaeology possesses tools unimaginable to earlier generations. One of the most revolutionary developments involves LiDAR, a technology that uses laser pulses to map landscapes with extraordinary precision. By effectively removing vegetation from digital images, LiDAR allows researchers to identify hidden features beneath forest canopies. In recent years, LiDAR has revealed ancient roads, earthworks, agricultural systems, and settlements previously invisible. From the ground, similar technologies including ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, geophysical surveys, and advanced chemical analysis continue transforming archaeological research. Sites once considered lost can now be detected without extensive excavation. The landscape itself begins revealing secrets long concealed from view. These technologies have already produced remarkable discoveries. Ancient earthworks thought destroyed have been rediscovered beneath forests. Previously unknown settlements have emerged through remote sensing. Archaeologists continue identifying new sites associated with cultures ranging from the earliest inhabitants of North America to more recent historical communities. Every discovery reinforces an important lesson. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Many places remain undiscovered not because they never existed, but because researchers have not yet located them. Climate change and environmental processes add another dimension to this mystery. Melting ice, shifting coastlines, drought conditions, and erosion occasionally expose archaeological materials hidden for centuries. Ancient footprints appear along lakebeds. Artifacts emerge from melting glaciers. Submerged landscapes become accessible during periods of low water. Such discoveries provide opportunities while also creating urgency. Archaeological resources can be damaged or destroyed once exposed. Researchers race to document evidence before it disappears. The past is constantly revealing itself, but often only briefly. Another source of future discovery involves collaboration with indigenous communities. For much of archaeological history, researchers overlooked or misunderstood knowledge preserved through oral traditions. Today, many archaeologists recognize the importance of indigenous perspectives in identifying sites, interpreting evidence, and understanding landscapes. Stories pass through Generations sometimes preserve information about places unknown to modern science. Collaborative research increasingly demonstrates that traditional knowledge and archaeological investigation can complement one another, producing richer understandings of the past. Some of the most important discoveries of the future may emerge through these partnerships. Yet perhaps the greatest reason mysteries remain hidden is simply the scale of the continent itself. North America is vast. Mountains, deserts, forests, wetlands, and river systems cover enormous areas. Even after centuries of exploration and research, many regions remain only partially investigated. Archaeologically, every valley, canyon, island, and floodplain possesses the potential to preserve evidence of human activity. Somewhere beneath the landscape may lie another Etsonoa, another earthwork complex, another set of ancient footprints, or another site capable of transforming historical understanding. We do not know where these places are. That uncertainty is precisely what makes archaeology so exciting. As our journey through America's lost mysteries comes to an past, the continent's history is far older, richer, and more surprising than many people realize. Every mystery explored tonight, from Roanoke to Cahokia, from Chaco Canyon to White Sands, began with traces hidden beneath ordinary landscapes. Some mysteries have yielded partial answers. Others remain unresolved. Many more have yet to be discovered at all. As the stars shine above deserts, forests, mountains, and rivers stretching across the continent, it becomes clear that the greatest mystery is not what we know, but what remains waiting to be found. Beneath the ground, beneath the trees, beneath the cities and fields of modern America, countless stories still sleep quietly in the darkness, waiting for the moment when someone finally uncovers them. Chapter 3, Segment 1, The Blythe Intaglios and the Brown Mountain Lights. As we move into the final chapter of our journey through America's lost mysteries, we leave behind the worlds of archaeology, forgotten cities, and ancient footprints and enter a realm where the evidence becomes more elusive. These are mysteries that exist not only in the distant past but also in the present. They are phenomena that people have witnessed with their own eyes, recorded in journals, described in newspapers, investigated by scientists, and debated for generations. Some may eventually find ordinary explanations. Others remain stubbornly resistant to certainty. Tonight, we begin with one of the strangest and most visually impressive mysteries hidden within the deserts of the American Southwest, the Blythe Intaglios. Deep within the Colorado Desert, near the California-Arizona border, enormous figures are etched into the earth. They are so large that they cannot be fully appreciated from ground level. Instead, their true forms become visible only from the air. Human-like shapes stretch across the desert floor. Geometric patterns accompany them. For centuries they remained largely unnoticed by the outside world, hidden in plain sight beneath the open sky. Their existence raises questions that continue fascinating archaeologists, historians, and visitors alike. Who created these figures? Why were they made? And how did people design works of art meant to be viewed from perspectives they themselves could never experience? To understand the mystery, imagine standing in the Colorado Desert long before modern roads, aircraft, and satellites existed. The landscape appears vast and unforgiving. Summer temperatures can become extreme. Vegetation is sparse. Mountains rise in the distance, while dry washes cut across the terrain. At first glance, nothing seems unusual. Yet if you could rise high above the desert floor, Perhaps from a mountaintop or an impossible bird's-eye view, you would see enormous shapes emerging from the ground itself. One figure appears human, stretching more than 100 feet across the desert surface. Others depict forms that seem connected to ceremonial or symbolic traditions. These are the Blythe intaglios, among the largest geoglyphs in North America. Unlike structures built upward, they were created by removing the darker surface layer of desert rock to expose lighter soil beneath. The resulting contrast formed images visible across great distances. The mystery deepens when we consider their age. Archaeologists generally believe the intaglios were created by indigenous peoples of the region, likely ancestors of groups including the CROATOAN and Mojave. Oral traditions among local communities associate the figures with important cultural and spiritual narratives. Some stories connect them to creation traditions and ancestral beings. Yet determining precise dates remains difficult. Estimates vary, and different figures may have been created during different periods. The desert environment helped preserve them, but it also complicates efforts to establish exact chronologies. Unlike wooden structures that can be dated through tree rings or organic remains suitable for radiocarbon analysis, geoglyphs often resist precise measurement. Their age remains part of the mystery. One of the most fascinating questions concerns construction. How were such large figures designed and executed? Modern observers often assume aerial perspectives are necessary for creating images on this scale. Yet ancient peoples around the world produced large geoglyphs long before flight existed. The famous Nazca lines of Peru provide another example. Researchers believe builders used simple surveying techniques, careful planning, and markers placed across landscapes to maintain proportions. Creating large figures did not require seeing them from the sky. It required understanding geometry, measurement, and collective effort. Still, the achievement remains impressive. The Blythe intaglios demonstrate that indigenous peoples possessed sophisticated knowledge of landscape design and symbolic expression. Purpose remains another source of debate. Were the figures connected to ceremonies? Did they mark important locations within broader cultural landscapes? Were they intended for spiritual beings rather than human audiences? Some researchers suggest that visibility from nearby hills may have been more important than visibility from directly overhead. Others emphasize connections to oral traditions and cosmological beliefs. The challenge is that the figures exist at the intersection of archaeology and culture. Physical evidence reveals how they were made but not necessarily what they meant. Meaning often resides within stories, traditions, and knowledge systems that are difficult to reconstruct fully through archaeology alone. For much of modern history, the intaglios remained relatively unknown outside local communities. Their rediscovery by non-indigenous observers occurred only in the 20th century, aided by aviation. Suddenly, images hidden across the desert became visible in ways never before possible. Public fascination grew. Photographs circulated. Researchers visited the sites. Yet increased attention also brought risks. Vehicles, development, and human activity threatened preservation. Protecting the geoglyphs became increasingly important. Today they remain among the most remarkable examples of large-scale ancient artwork in North America. Yet despite decades of study, significant questions remain unanswered. As sunset paints the desert in shades of gold and red, shadows lengthen across the figures carved into the earth. They have survived centuries of wind, heat, and changing human landscapes. Their creators are gone, but the images remain. Looking upon them, one senses both knowledge and mystery. We know they were created deliberately. We know they held meaning. We know they emerged from sophisticated cultural traditions. Yet many details remain hidden. The Blythe intaglios remind us that not all mysteries involve disappearance. Sometimes the mystery lies in presence itself. The figures are still there, visible beneath the open sky. What remains uncertain is the full story behind them. Their silent forms continue inviting questions, just as they have for generations, preserving a connection between landscape, memory, and imagination that refuses to fade. As darkness settles across the deserts of the Southwest and our journey shifts eastward toward the ancient Appalachian Mountains, we encounter a different kind of mystery. Unlike the Blythe intaglios, which exist as physical structures carved into the earth, this mystery involves something far more fleeting. It appears suddenly, often without warning. It glows against the darkness, vanishes before observers can approach. For centuries, people have reported strange lights, hovering above the forests and ridges of western North Carolina. Known today as the Brown Mountain Lights, these mysterious illuminations have inspired legends, scientific investigations, newspaper articles, and endless speculation. Generations of witnesses have described seeing glowing orbs drifting through the night, changing color, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Some observers report white lights. Others describe red, orange, yellow, or bluish glows. Explanations range from natural atmospheric effects to folklore, geological activity, and more exotic possibilities. Yet, despite decades of study, the Brown Mountain Lights remain one of America's most famous unexplained phenomena. To understand the mystery, imagine standing on a mountain overlook on a cool autumn evening. The forests below stretch across valleys and ridges fading into darkness. The air is still. Stars emerge overhead. Then, far in the distance, a small point of light appears above the landscape. At first, it resembles a lantern or campfire. Yet it does not behave like either. The light moves. It brightens unexpectedly. Sometimes it seems to float. Other times it vanishes entirely before reappearing elsewhere. Additional lights may emerge. Some flicker. Others remain steady. The phenomenon can last minutes or hours. Then, just as mysteriously, it disappears. Witnesses have described such experiences for generations. Reports date back at least to the 19th century and likely much earlier. Indigenous traditions associated with the region also contain stories involving unusual lights. While details vary, many accounts describe luminous phenomena appearing in the mountains long before modern technology introduced artificial sources capable of creating confusion. These traditions contribute to the enduring fascination surrounding Brown Mountain. The mystery seems deeply rooted within both landscape and memory. One reason the lights attract so much attention is the consistency of certain descriptions. Independent witnesses often report similar characteristics. Lights appear above specific areas. Colors and behaviors recur across accounts separated by decades. Such patterns encouraged formal investigation. In the early 20th century, scientific teams visited the region hoping to identify causes. Government agencies, journalists, and researchers conducted observations. Some concluded that many sightings could be explained by distant train headlights, automobile lights, campfires, or atmospheric conditions affecting visibility. Under certain circumstances, temperature inversions and variations in air density can refract light, causing distant sources to appear elevated, distorted, or mobile. These explanations account for at least some reports, yet not all observers found them completely satisfying. Certain sightings occurred before automobiles became common. Others involved movements difficult to reconcile with known light sources. As a result, debate continued. Geological explanations also emerged. Some researchers proposed that natural stresses within rocks might generate luminous phenomena under specific conditions. Similar ideas have been suggested for mysterious lights reported elsewhere in the world. Electrical activity associated with geological processes could, in theory, produce unusual glows, yet evidence remains limited. Demonstrating such mechanisms conclusively has proven difficult. Like many enduring mysteries, the Brown Mountain Lights occupy a space where multiple partial explanations coexist without completely resolving every observation. Human perception adds another layer of complexity. Nighttime environments can be deceptive. Distance is difficult to judge. Small light sources may appear larger than they actually are. Atmospheric conditions influence visibility in unexpected ways. Once stories about mysterious lights become widespread, observers may interpret ambiguous experiences through that framework. None of this means sightings are imaginary. Rather, it highlights the challenge of investigating phenomena occurring under conditions where perception and environment interact. The mountains themselves contribute to the mystery. Brown Mountain occupies a region rich in folklore and natural beauty. Forested ridges create dramatic scenery. Valleys channel mist and atmospheric effects. The landscape feels ancient and secluded. Such settings naturally inspire stories. Over generations, the lights became part of regional identity. Tourists visit overlooks, hoping to witness them. Locals share accounts passed through families. The phenomenon exists, not only as a physical mystery but also as a cultural one, woven into the history of the region. Modern technology has improved opportunities for observation. Cameras, sensors, and detailed mapping allow researchers to analyze potential sources more effectively than earlier generations could. Many sightings have indeed been linked to known causes, yet reports continue. New witnesses describe experiences that seem difficult to explain completely. Whether these accounts represent rare atmospheric conditions, unusual perceptions, undiscovered natural mechanisms, or simply combinations of familiar factors remains uncertain. What is clear is that the mystery endures because it exists at the boundary between explanation and wonder. As midnight approaches and the Appalachian forests grow quiet beneath a sky filled with stars, it becomes easier to understand why the Brown Mountain Lights continue captivating imagination. They remind us that mystery does not always require hidden cities or lost civilizations. Sometimes it appears as a brief glow in the darkness, a momentary illumination against the night. Perhaps future research will eventually explain every sighting. Perhaps some aspects will remain uncertain. Either way, the lights continue appearing generation after generation, inviting each new observer to look into the darkness and wonder what might be waiting there. Chapter 3, Segment 2, The Taos Hum and the Oak Island Mystery. As our journey through America's strangest mysteries continues, we leave behind the glowing lights of the Appalachian Mountains and travel westward toward the high deserts of northern New Mexico. Here, surrounded by rugged mesas, distant mountain ranges, and vast open skies lies the historic town of Taos. For centuries, people have been drawn to this remarkable landscape. Artists came seeking inspiration. Travelers arrived in search of beauty and solitude. Indigenous communities have lived in the region for generations, maintaining traditions deeply connected to the land. Yet alongside its rich cultural history, Taos has become famous for something far more unusual. For decades, a small number of residents have reported hearing a mysterious sound. Unlike anything they can easily identify, they describe it as a low-frequency hum, a distant, droning noise, or the persistent vibration of machinery operating somewhere beyond hearing range. The sound is often subtle. Many people never notice it at all. Yet for those who do hear it, the experience can be difficult to ignore. It may continue for hours, days, or even longer. Attempts to locate its source often fail. The phenomenon has become known simply as the Taos hum, one of the most famous unexplained sounds in the world. To understand the mystery, imagine standing outside on a calm evening in the desert. The air is still. No vehicles pass nearby. Wind barely stirs. The vegetation, the landscape appears peaceful and silent. Yet somewhere within that silence, faint vibration seems present. It is not loud enough to resemble ordinary noise. Instead, it exists at the edge of perception, a subtle sensation that some describe as being heard and felt simultaneously. Listeners often compare it to the sound of a diesel engine idling far away, except that no engine can be found. The hum seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. What makes the phenomenon particularly intriguing is that only a minority of people report hearing it. This fact immediately complicates efforts to explain the mystery. If the sound originates from a physical source, why do some individuals hear it while others standing nearby do not? Reports of unusual hums exist in other parts of the world as well, but Taos became especially famous during the 1990s when media attention brought widespread awareness to the phenomenon. Residents shared stories. Researchers arrived. Investigations began. Scientists, engineers, physicians, and government agencies all attempted to determine whether an external source could be identified. One possibility involved industrial activity. Modern environments contain countless sources of low-frequency sound. Electrical infrastructure, machinery, ventilation systems, transportation networks, and other technologies can generate vibrations capable of traveling considerable distances. Under certain conditions, atmospheric effects may influence how such sounds are perceived. Investigators searched for mechanical explanations, measuring noise levels and examining local infrastructure. Yet no single source consistently accounted for all reports. The mystery persisted. Another possibility focused on human perception itself. Hearing is an extraordinarily complex process influenced by both external stimuli and internal biological factors. Some researchers suggested that certain individuals might be unusually sensitive to low-frequency sounds that others fail to notice. Others explored medical explanations involving tinnitus, a condition that can produce persistent sounds without external sources. Yet many listeners insisted that the hum differed from known forms of tinnitus. Some reported hearing it only in specific locations. Others described experiences shared with family members or neighbors. The phenomenon resisted simple categorization. Psychological factors entered the discussion as well. Once awareness of the hum spread, expectations may have influenced perception. Human beings naturally search for patterns and explanations. If individuals anticipate hearing a mysterious sound, they may interpret ambiguous sensory experiences accordingly. Yet, this explanation alone proved unsatisfying to many observers because reports often emerged before widespread publicity. The challenge lay in separating expectation from experience. Researchers found themselves confronting questions not only about acoustics but also about perception, attention, and the ways human beings interpret their environments. Environmental explanations offered additional possibilities. The desert landscape surrounding Taos creates unique acoustic conditions. Wind moving across terrain can generate subtle sounds. Geological processes may produce vibrations. Atmospheric phenomena sometimes influence the transmission of low-frequency noise. Certain researchers proposed combinations of natural and human-made factors interacting in complex ways. Yet, despite decades of investigation, no explanation achieved universal acceptance. Every theory accounted for some aspects of the mystery while leaving others unresolved. Perhaps this is why the Taos hum continues attracting attention. Unlike mysteries rooted entirely in the distant past, it remains a living phenomenon. New reports occasionally emerge. Individuals continue describing experiences similar to those recorded decades earlier. Whether the hum represents an unusual environmental effect, a collection of unrelated phenomena grouped under a common label, or something else entirely remains uncertain. What is clear is that the mystery reveals something fascinating about human experience. Not all unanswered questions involve lost civilizations or forgotten artifacts. Sometimes they involve the ordinary act of listening. As night deepens across the New Mexico, desert and stars fill the sky above the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The landscape appears quiet and peaceful. Yet somewhere within that silence, according to those who hear it, the hum continues. Perhaps future research will eventually identify its source. Perhaps multiple explanations contribute to different reports. Or perhaps the phenomenon will remain one of those mysteries existing at the boundary between environment and perception. Whatever the outcome, the Taos hum reminds us that even in the modern world, where technology measures countless aspects of reality, certain experiences remain difficult to explain fully. The desert keeps its secrets well, and sometimes those secrets arrive not as visible phenomena but as faint sounds carried through the night. As the mysterious vibrations of the New Mexico desert fade into the background of our journey, we travel northeast across the continent and beyond the borders of the United States to a small island off the coast of Nova Scotia. Although Oak Island lies in Canada, its story has become deeply intertwined with American popular culture and the broader tradition of North Atlantic mysteries. For more than 2 centuries, treasure hunters, engineers, adventurers, historians, and dreamers have been drawn to this modest island by a legend that refuses to disappear. It is a mystery involving hidden chambers, buried treasure, elaborate traps, missing documents, coded symbols, and countless failed attempts to uncover whatever may lie beneath the ground. Known simply as the Oak Island Mystery, it has inspired one of the longest-running treasure hunts in history. Generations have invested time, money, and hope into solving it. Yet despite extraordinary effort, the central question remains unanswered. Is there truly something valuable hidden beneath the island, or has the search itself become the real mystery? To understand the fascination, imagine the late 18th century. 3 young men exploring Oak Island notice something unusual. According to traditional accounts, they discover a depression in the ground. Beneath an oak tree, nearby evidence suggests human activity. Curious, they begin digging. First, the excavation seems ordinary. Then they encounter layers of logs placed at regular intervals. Below the surface, the deeper they dig, the stranger the situation becomes. Additional layers. Began as a simple excavation evolves into a mystery that will outlast generations. Early treasure. Hunters believed they had discovered a hidden vault. Stories circulated regarding pirate treasure, perhaps linked to figures such as Captain Kidd. Others proposed caches of gold, jewels, or valuable artifacts. Over time, increasingly elaborate theories emerged. Some suggested connections to lost religious relics. Others proposed hidden manuscripts, royal treasures, or documents capable of reshaping history. The possibilities expanded with every generation. Yet, regardless of the theory, one challenge remained constant: reaching the bottom of the so-called money pit proved extraordinarily difficult. As excavations continued, searchers encountered flooding. Water filled shafts unexpectedly. Attempts to block its flow often failed. Engineers designed increasingly sophisticated methods. New shafts were dug. Pumps were installed. Machinery was brought to the island. Yet success remained elusive. The flooding became one of the mystery's defining features. According to some interpretations, the island contained an elaborate system of artificial flood tunnels designed to protect whatever lay hidden below. If true, such engineering would represent a remarkable achievement. Yet proving the existence and purpose of these tunnels has proven difficult. Over 2 centuries, numerous excavations altered the landscape. Evidence became mixed with later disturbances, separating original features from. The results of treasure hunting became increasingly challenging. Historical records complicate matters further. Many early accounts were written years after events supposedly occurred. Details vary between sources. Certain stories may have been exaggerated or misunderstood. As often happens with enduring mysteries, legend and fact became intertwined. Some elements are well documented. Others rely primarily upon tradition. The result is a narrative where certainty becomes difficult to establish. Every generation inherits not only the mystery itself but also centuries of accumulated speculation. Archaeological investigations have produced intriguing discoveries. Wooden structures, metal objects, tools, fragments of parchment, and other materials have been recovered from various locations on the island. Some findings suggest human activity, dating back earlier than expected. Others remain open to interpretation. The challenge is that none provide definitive proof of a hidden treasure. Each discovery generates new theories while leaving core questions unresolved. Why did people undertake significant excavation and construction activities on the island? When exactly did those activities occur? What purpose did they serve? The answers remain uncertain. One reason the mystery endures is that Oak Island exists at the intersection of multiple forms of curiosity, combines archaeology, engineering, history, folklore, and the timeless appeal of treasure hunting. The possibility of a dramatic discovery continues, motivating exploration. At the same time, the repeated failure to uncover definitive answers transforms the search itself into part of the legend. Success always seems just beyond reach. Every new excavation promises resolution, yet the mystery survives. Modern technology has brought unprecedented capabilities to the investigation. ground-penetrating radar, seismic imaging, underwater exploration, and advanced drilling techniques allow researchers to examine areas inaccessible to earlier generations. Television programs have documented ongoing efforts. New discoveries continue attracting public attention. Yet even with these tools, complete certainty, once considered mysterious, others maintain that evidence of intentional construction remains compelling. The debate continues because the available data supports multiple interpretations. As waves move gently along the island's shoreline and moonlight reflects across the North Atlantic, Oak Island feels suspended between history and legend. Perhaps treasure exists. Perhaps it never did. Perhaps the true story involves activities entirely different from those imagined by generations of searchers. What makes the mystery fascinating is not merely the possibility of hidden riches but the persistence of human curiosity itself. For more than 200 years, people have looked at the island and believed there was something worth finding. That belief has inspired extraordinary effort, remarkable engineering, and endless speculation. Whether future discoveries finally solve the mystery or simply create new questions, Oak Island remains a reminder that some of history's most enduring enigmas survive not because answers are impossible, but because the search for those answers becomes part of the story. Chapter 3, Segment 3. Why America Still Holds So Many Secrets and the Discoveries Yet to Come. As our long journey through America's lost mysteries begins approaching its final destination, it is worth pausing for a moment to consider a remarkable fact. Throughout this documentary, we have traveled across deserts, mountains, forests, coastlines, river valleys, and grasslands. We have explored vanished colonies, forgotten cities, mysterious earthworks, ancient footprints, unexplained lights, strange sounds, hidden trade networks, and archaeological discoveries that challenged long-established assumptions. Yet despite everything we have examined, the most surprising realization may be that we have only scratched the surface. America remains one of the most archaeologically complex and historically mysterious regions on Earth. Beneath modern landscapes lie countless stories that have not yet been discovered, interpreted, or fully understood. This is not because researchers have failed to look. On the contrary, generations of archaeologists, historians, geologists, indigenous knowledge keepers, and explorers have devoted their lives to studying the continent. The reason so many mysteries remain is much simpler and far more fascinating. The continent itself is enormous. Its history spans thousands upon thousands of years. Human beings have occupied its landscapes for far longer than many people once believed. Every mountain range, river valley, canyon, coastline, forest, and desert contains layers of history, accumulated across countless generations. Much of that history remains hidden from view. Imagine standing on a modern city street somewhere in North America. Cars pass by, buildings rise overhead, people move through routines shaped by the present. Yet beneath the pavement may lie traces of communities that existed centuries or millennia earlier. Beneath farmland may rest forgotten villages. Beneath forests may survive ancient trails once traveled by traders, hunters, pilgrims, and families. Rivers have changed course countless times, burying evidence beneath layers of sediment. Coastlines have shifted dramatically since the end of the last ice age, submerging entire landscapes beneath the ocean. Lakes have expanded and contracted. Forests have advanced and retreated. Every environmental change altered the visibility of the archaeological record. Many sites did not disappear because they were destroyed. They disappeared because nature concealed them. Consider how much of human history was constructed from materials that do not survive indefinitely. Stone monuments often attract attention because they endure. Yet many North American cultures built homes from wood, reeds, generations, but once abandoned, they gradually returned to the landscape. Forests reclaimed, settlements, grasses covered former villages, floods buried campsites. The absence of visible ruins does not mean the absence of history. It simply means that history often survives in subtle forms requiring careful investigation to recognize. This reality explains why major discoveries continue occurring in places people believed were already well understood. The rediscovery of Etzanoa demonstrated that large cities could fade from memory despite historical documentation. The White Sands footprints revealed evidence capable of reshaping debates regarding the earliest human presence in North America. New archaeological sites emerge regularly through research, construction projects, environmental change, and technological innovation. Each discovery reminds us that the map of the past remains incomplete. Technology has transformed the search for hidden history. Earlier generations relied heavily upon visible clues. Researchers walked landscapes looking for artifacts, earthworks, or unusual features. While such methods remain important, modern tools allow archaeologists to see beneath vegetation, soil, and even water. LiDAR technology uses laser pulses to create detailed maps of landscapes. Ground penetrating radar reveals buried structures without excavation. Satellite imagery identifies patterns invisible from the ground. Chemical analysis traces ancient diets, migrations, and environmental conditions. DNA studies illuminate relationships among populations across vast spans of time. These innovations do not eliminate mystery. Instead, they reveal how much more there is to learn. Every answer generates new questions. Every discovery opens additional areas for exploration. One of the most important developments in recent decades involves growing collaboration between archaeologists and indigenous communities. For much of modern history, researchers often ignored traditional knowledge preserved through oral histories and cultural memory. Today, many scholars recognize that indigenous perspectives provide invaluable insights into landscapes, histories, and places that archaeology alone cannot fully explain. Stories pass through generations, sometimes preserve information about locations, events, and relationships invisible within material evidence. Collaboration enriches understanding by combining different forms of knowledge. Some mysteries become clearer when scientific investigation and traditional knowledge work together. Others reveal new layers of complexity. Either way, the result is a richer and more accurate picture of the past. Another reason America retains so many secrets involves simple geography. The continent contains remote regions where archaeological investigation remains limited. Mountain valleys, deserts, wetlands, islands, and dense forests cover immense areas. Even heavily populated regions contain locations rarely examined in detail. Every year, researchers identify previously unknown sites. Most are modest. Occasionally, however, discoveries emerge that transform entire fields of study. Few archaeologists expected the White Sands footprints to challenge established migration models. Few anticipated that the lost city of Etzanoa would reemerge so dramatically. Such surprises remind us that certainty is often temporary. Historical understanding evolves continuously as new evidence appears. The mysteries explored throughout this documentary illustrate that process perfectly. Cahokia forced historians to reconsider assumptions regarding urbanism in North America. Chaco Canyon challenged expectations about social organization in the Southwest. The Newark earthworks revealed astonishing astronomical knowledge. Ancient copper trade networks demonstrated continent-wide connections extending back thousands of years. Each mystery expanded understanding while revealing additional unknowns. As twilight settles across the continent and shadows stretch across mountains, deserts, forests, and rivers, one begins to appreciate the scale of what remains hidden. America still holds so many secrets because history is not a completed puzzle waiting only to be assembled. It is a living field of discovery. The past continues revealing itself gradually, often in unexpected places. Beneath ordinary landscapes lie extraordinary stories. Some will be uncovered tomorrow. Others may remain hidden for centuries, and some may never be found at all. That uncertainty is not frustrating. It is inspiring. It reminds us that exploration is not limited to distant planets or unexplored oceans. Sometimes the greatest frontiers exist beneath our own feet. As the final hours of our journey unfold and the landscapes we have visited begin blending together in memory, from the towering mounds of Cahokia to the deserts of white sands, from the forests surrounding the Newark earthworks to the windswept shores of Roanoke, it becomes clear that America's greatest mysteries are not confined to the past. They extend into the future as, well, every generation inherits unanswered questions from those who came before. At the same time, each generation gains new tools, new perspectives, and new opportunities to seek answers. The future of discovery may prove just as fascinating as the mysteries themselves. If history has taught us anything, it is that some of the most important breakthroughs arrive unexpectedly. Sites once considered insignificant reveal extraordinary evidence. New technologies uncover hidden landscapes. Long dismissed theories gain support through fresh data. Assumptions once regarded as unquestionable are revised in light of new discoveries. The process of understanding the past is never truly finished. It evolves continuously, shaped by curiosity, evidence, and the willingness to reconsider what we think we know. Imagine an archaeologist 50 years from now examining a landscape that appears ordinary today. Advanced technologies may reveal buried settlements, invisible to current instruments. Artificial intelligence could identify patterns within vast archaeological datasets impossible for humans to detect alone. Underwater exploration may locate ancient coastal sites submerged since the end of the Ice Age. Genetic research could illuminate migrations and relationships with unprecedented detail. Climate science may help reconstruct ancient environments in ways barely imaginable today. Every technological advance expands the range of questions researchers can ask. The future promises discoveries that current generations cannot yet predict. Some of the most exciting possibilities involve ancient coastlines. During the last ice age, sea levels were significantly lower than they are today. Vast areas of land now submerged beneath the Atlantic, Pacific, Gulf, and Arctic waters once formed habitable landscapes. Rivers flowed across plains that no longer exist. Human populations may have occupied some of these regions. As sea levels rose, coastlines shifted inward, covering evidence beneath water. Underwater archaeology remains challenging. but advances in technology are making exploration increasingly feasible. Future discoveries beneath the oceans could transform understanding of early human settlement throughout North America. Entire chapters of history may still rest beneath the waves. Forested regions also hold tremendous potential. Dense vegetation can conceal archaeological features for centuries. Recent LiDAR surveys in various parts of the world have revealed hidden roads, agricultural systems, ceremonial centers, and settlements, previously unknown to researchers. Similar work continues throughout North America. Every new survey has the potential to identify sites overlooked for generations. Earthworks hidden beneath forests, ancient pathways connecting communities, and forgotten settlements may still await discovery. The landscape is often more crowded with history than it appears from ground level. Another source of future breakthroughs lies in collaboration. Increasingly, researchers recognize that archaeology benefits from partnerships involving historians, indigenous communities, geologists, ecologists, engineers, and specialists from many other fields. Complex mysteries rarely yield to single approaches. Understanding ancient footprints requires geology, climate science, archaeology, and dating techniques. Investigating trade networks involves chemistry, anthropology, and historical analysis. Future discoveries will likely emerge from similar combinations of expertise. The boundaries between disciplines continue becoming more flexible, creating opportunities for insights that would have been difficult to achieve in isolation. Yet perhaps the most important lesson concerns humility. Again and again, the mysteries we have explored demonstrated how incomplete historical knowledge can be. Scholars once doubted that large cities existed in portions of North America. Cahokia changed that perception. Researchers once believed certain migration timelines were secure. White sands introduced new possibilities. Entire settlements such as Etzanoa disappeared from mainstream historical awareness before being rediscovered. These examples remind us that absence of evidence often reflects limitations of knowledge rather than limitations of the past. The continent still contains countless places not yet investigated. Future generations may look back upon current assumptions much as modern scholars view outdated theories from previous centuries. This is not a weakness of science or history. It is a strength. Knowledge grows because people remain willing to revise conclusions when evidence demands it. The enduring appeal of mysteries stems partly from this process. Mysteries invite curiosity. They encourage observation. They remind us that certainty is rarely absolute. Whether considering the Brown Mountain Lights, the Taos, Oak Island, Chaco Canyon, or Roanoke, the most valuable outcome is not always a final answer. Sometimes the search itself expands understanding. Questions lead to investigation. Investigation leads to discovery. Discovery reveals new questions. The cycle continues. As our journey reaches its conclusion, the continent stretches out before us one final time. Deserts glow beneath moonlight. Rivers wind through forests. Mountains cast long shadows across valleys. Beneath these landscapes lie traces of countless lives. Builders, travelers, traders, families, explorers, artists, leaders, children, and communities whose stories shape the world we inhabit today. Some of their histories have been recovered. Others remain hidden, somewhere beneath the forests, deserts, coastlines, mountains, and plains of North America. Future discoveries are waiting. They may involve lost settlements, ancient roads, forgotten ceremonies, unexplained phenomena, or entirely unexpected revelations. We do not know what will be found. That uncertainty is what makes the future so fascinating. And so, as the stars shine above a continent still rich with unanswered questions, we are left with one final realization. America's greatest mystery is not a single site, artifact, or phenomenon. It is the vast amount of history that remains undiscovered. The story is still being written. The search is still underway. And somewhere, perhaps at this very moment, the next great mystery waits quietly beneath the surface, ready to be found. And so, our journey through America's lost mysteries comes gently to an end. Tonight, we traveled across an entire continent and through thousands of years of history. We stood among the towering mounds of Cahokia, followed the forgotten roads of Chaco culture. National Historical Park, searched for clues left behind by the vanished settlers of Roanoke colony, and walked beside the ancient footprints preserved at White Sands National Park. We explored giant desert figures carved into the earth, mysterious stone structures hidden within forests, forgotten cities buried beneath the Great Plains, strange lights drifting across mountain valleys, unexplained sounds echoing through the desert, and treasure legends that have inspired generations of explorers. Some of these mysteries may one day be solved. New discoveries, new technologies, and future generations of researchers may uncover answers that remain hidden today. But other mysteries may endure forever, remaining silent reminders that the past is often far more complex, surprising, and fascinating than we imagine. Perhaps that is why these stories continue to captivate us. They remind us that history is not simply a collection of facts and dates. It is an ongoing search. Beneath every landscape, beyond every horizon, and behind every unanswered question lies the possibility of discovery. As you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine the countless stories still waiting beneath deserts, forests, rivers, mountains, and coastlines across North America. Somewhere beneath the ground, hidden beneath centuries of change, another forgotten city, another ancient trail, or another remarkable mystery may still be waiting to be found. Thank you for joining me on this journey through America's forgotten civilizations, ancient secrets, unexplained phenomena, and unsolved history. If you enjoyed this relaxing exploration of the past, be sure to subscribe and join us again for more peaceful journeys into history, archaeology, ancient mysteries, and the hidden stories of our world. Until next time, rest well, sleep peacefully, and let the mysteries of the past carry you gently into the night.